Hello everybody, it's been a while since we did a video, but I plan to gear up a little bit before the World Series, do some study of my own, and possibly give you guys some insight into what people study today and how poker's evolved. And we're going to title this video, Familiarizing Yourself with Ranges, or something along those lines. And essentially, for a lot of you, this will be somewhat elementary. If you're one of the younger generation, you've probably already put in a lot of work using, sort of combinatrix and range charts. But I think for a lot of players who maybe, were poker fans or players during the era of 2004 to 2010, this is all stuff that's going to be, for the most part, pretty new to you. So typically when I do a video where I'm breaking down a hand, I try to stay as generic as possible. Like, he could have this, but then like if I raise this, and I try to keep the way in which we discuss the hand to a very elementary level for the most part, in such a way that you'll understand it. And what I want to do here is familiarize yourself and help to familiarize you a little bit more with the idea behind ranges and sort of how that's developed over the years. And when we think back to, say, again, the heyday, the 2004 era, poker worked. Nobody actually used the term range. It just wasn't a thing. I mean, obviously people put people on ranges of hands, but it looked a lot different than it does today. So for example, if I raised under the gun and a very tight player to my left re-raised me in second position, well, I've got him on a range of hands, but I didn't think of it in those terms. I would think like, okay, well, this guy either has aces, kings, queens, or ace-king. Okay, which we're going to actually really break down this specific situation into, combos and how decisions are made based on once you can like pinpoint people on a range. But I want to look specifically at this example just to give you an evolution and show you how this whole topic has evolved. Like in the old days, you raise under the gun, player 3-bets you from under the gun +1. Many players existed where their range was simply queens, kings, aces, or ace-king. That means basically those are the only hands they would do that with. Every other hand, they would flat call or fold. So like ace-queen, they're going to flat, jacks, tens, they're going to flat, right? So now let's say you're sitting there with jacks specifically, and now the flop comes 8-5 deuce. Well, there is also a certain number of players who are always betting overpairs and checking back when they don't have an overpair, because obviously I raise under the gun, which is a strong position, and I call the re-raise. So typically in this spot, what players would do is if they had the aces, kings, or the queens, they would bet, and if they had the ace-king, they would check. So essentially, this was like, the person's range was exactly one hand, which was ace-king. Well, so obviously, these types of players are not what you're going to find in most tournaments or cash games. People have a much wider range of hands that they're going to re-raise with, some suited connectors, but there was a time when there were plenty of players that fit right into this category, and it was very easy to have, they would have such a narrow range before the flop and a 3-bet pot in the situation, then their bet would dictate even more, closely exactly what that range would. And the check specifically represented exactly one combination of hands, and that was always ace-king. So you could play accordingly with your jacks by simply calling the raise pre-flop, and then on the 8-5 deuce flop, check folding. I'm not kidding. Check folding to a lot of these players. Whereas if they check back, your jacks are good, provided an ace or a king doesn't hit the turn or river. Gus Hansen, I remember back in 2005, played a hand so strangely where everyone was like, what did you do there? There was a hand where he had jacks, and he was pretty confident his opponent had ace-king, but he didn't get it in pre-flop. The board came really nice for him, like 8-5 deuce type situation. He checked back the flop, checked back the turn on a brick, and then was waiting. He knew what the player had. He was quite certain he had ace-king, but also felt like because it was Gus Hansen that the player was going to call him anyway. So he decided to just literally wait to see if he would get beat, and then he knew he was going to get paid on the river. So he checked it all the way down to the river, a blank hit. He went all in with the jacks. The player called with